Good evening, everyone. So we hopefully should be live. I'm just going to... Oh, yes, that's okay there. Welcome to another Azeroth review. For any of those who may be new to this, you basically just ask whatever you want to talk about. Anything to do with World of Warcraft, of course, or just Warcraft in general. But it tends to be World of Warcraft. And I suppose we'll... well, it's BlizzCon imminently. I've noticed Blizzard are now asking for questions to come in, just like they would for a Q&A. Of course, they've abandoned the notion that people should just be able to put their hands up and ask questions at BlizzCon. Heaven forbid that's the sort of behaviour that goes on at a convention of this nature. So, you know, that means basically we all get to put our questions in. So we could discuss what sort of questions we should throw in. So, Ian Hazakostas, what are you most proud about BfA? What do you think's the best part of BfA? What are people who are not playing BfA missing about BfA? Oh, hello. Oh, everyone's from the US today. Blimey. Aren't you? Shouldn't you be at work? It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the latest, surely, in America at the moment. I don't know. Anyway, good afternoon or good evening or good morning or good whatever. To people. I occasionally get the odd Australian on here who should actually, quite frankly, be in bed. But there we go. I was... it's lunchtime, is it? Okay, well, that's all right then. I didn't actually get a lunchtime today. I had to get a load of printing done, but I got there just slightly after physics, which is always a bad move, because as soon as physics gets to the printer, that's it. There's 1,000 copies coming out. You are working. You're not working if you're watching this. No, stop with the drinking game. Very bad. I was having to actually tell my students today, you know, growing brains in particular. Obviously, by the time brain's gone to my age, it doesn't really matter what you do with it anymore. But at their age, you know, they're doing untold damage, long-term damage by drinking heavily. This is what I mean. Talking about the US, this is why in the US. It's illegal to drink before you're like 21, isn't it? Supposedly, because... Well, I don't know why that is. I doubt the law actually came through for scientific reasons. But anyway, good afternoon, everyone. So, what are we going to talk about today? I mean, I suppose we could have more guessing about what they're going to say at BlizzCon. I've already been saying I'm less interested about what they're going to say in BlizzCon. I'm more interested in what they're going to do over the next couple of months. Oh, from Finland, oh yeah. No, well, it's getting nice and dark here as well. I sort of quite like winter because I like it when it's cold. As many of you will know, I moaned like bloody hell earlier this summer when it was too hot to do anything. So I'm quite happy with the cold. I'm less Who has better beer? Who has better beer? What was I talking about? Anyway, I'm less enamoured of the driving conditions though, because low sun, right in your eyes, and potentially icy weather, which I've got away with so far, but apparently it's been icy near me, and I've had a student and a colleague basically have a black ice related crash, so it's not been good for some people. Legally can drink at 21, but that isn't going to deter any kid who wants to get plastered. No, I've seen enough television and films, American television and films, to know full well that only the most law-abiding American citizens wait until they're 21 before getting hammered. But it's not good. The point is, it's not good. It's very bad for you. Oh, don't make me work things out. Oh, 14. Oh, that's not too bad. That's not too warm. I'm sort of okay with that. It's a little bit warmer than I like. Where I am in, what would it be? I'm not putting it into Fahrenheit. It's about, I don't know, 15 to 18 degrees Celsius, which is fine. I'm okay. The temperature's absolutely fine. As I say, if it's cold, I can always put a jumper on. Right? I mean, I've got the heater on here. I can always put... I'm totally... When it's cold, it's easy. It's only driving conditions that are a problem in winter. Everything else, fine. Oh, apart from when I had one of my sinks get blocked up with ice last year. That was awkward. But You haven't logged into WoW in 1.5 weeks. Well, no, it's what do you call it? I don't know, because adjusting to that word life, I shouldn't say because people are going to start drinking, is really weird. Because sometimes I don't log on for ages. I certainly don't log on every day. And even if I do, I don't do anything. Like, I was pottering about yesterday, not even doing world quests. I should have just gone out and done some world quests. Can't be asked, don't need to. I can't remember why I went. I logged on basically, I went to the gaming club, and then I came back home, and I logged on for something. I can't remember what now. And then just got instantly invited to a Mythic +10 group, which was great because I hadn't done a +10 this week. So I've done a +10 at least this week, so that's all right. A nice little Siege of Borealis there. Am I always going to have a science corner on the mailbox each week? No, no, no. It's just someone happened to ask something, and then either the same person or someone else asked something else, and that's all. That is, no, it's not normal. It's just there because it has happened before. I can't remember what started it, actually. I really can't remember what started it. But I sometimes can't help myself when talking about things scientifically. You didn't start drinking until you were 21. WoW launched when you were almost done with high school, so you had no time to drink with friends. Too busy grinding PvP ranks and raiding. See, this is it. This was actually the joke when World of Warcraft first came out. You know, particularly in America, they have a slightly different attitude to teenagers, should we say, than in Europe. So in America, it was all the thing about parents like tearing their hair out, wondering, how do I stop my child going out, getting drunk, having sex, doing all these terrible things? And, you know, World of Warcraft, it's the ultimate protector of virginity and sobriety. You know, get your kids to play World of Warcraft, job done. But for some reason, you know, those sorts of parents didn't like World of Warcraft either because, you know, if it's got magic in it, it must be the tool of the devil. You know, Harry Potter's been in trouble. Dungeons and Dragons apparently was a big problem in the 1970s. People considering it a modern form of witchcraft. I don't know. One real question you had. Good. Do I have kids? No. Am I a nice uncle? I am an uncle. I don't actually see my nieces very often because they live at the other side of the country. Now, I know it's a much smaller country than some of you come from, but it's still the other side of a country. And I'm not much of a traveller, and neither are they. So I have seen them now and then, but not that often. I'm not very close with my family. I get on with my sister, but yeah, we're just miles apart now. So I'm possibly a nice uncle. I have been a nice uncle when I've seen them. Well, you often find in any society that it's the hypocrites that are the loudest ones. And therefore, you can almost imagine from someone looking from the outside that that sort of behaviour is more widespread than it really is. That's how racial stereotypes appear in the first place, isn't it? Because we only see what we see from the outside, which is generally the loudest and usually the most obnoxious people in a society. But anyway, never mind. Should we get on to some World of Warcrafty stuff? So, what else have we got on? Oh, that was a thing. I was trying out. I'm trying to avoid spoilers. It's always really difficult because some of the more interesting things tend to be the newer things. But I was trying out the new war, the next step in the war campaign on the PTR. And I don't mean the Saurfang and the Sylvanas one, but I mean the other one, which isn't fully working at the moment. But the thing is, what I couldn't help notice in that story, I don't know whether anyone else has noticed this, is it keeps talking about achieving imminent victory. You know, it's like, oh, the war's going to... So I'm now thinking... Because I'd thought this before. I've always thought from the start that Battle for Azeroth is not a faction versus faction expansion. It's an old gods expansion. And I'm really starting to now think that the faction v faction thing, the alliance versus horde thing, is going to come to some sort of climax quite early in the expansion, and then we can go fully onto the old god stuff. And I'm very much getting that impression when I do that, the next bit of the world campaign. Do I happen to know if the new Avenging Wrath animation is used when talented into Avenging Wrath? Oh, Avenging Crusade was holy. Oh, I could easily find out. No, I don't, actually. Let's see. Oh, yeah, that's another thing as well. Okay, BlizzCon, semi-exciting news for me, not for anyone else. So I notice that for BlizzCon, of course, if you've got the ticket or the virtual ticket, then you get access to WoW Classic Demo. But it's for an unspecified limited amount of time, sort of, because they need to let everyone have a go on it. I have 3 accounts. And when I look on my Battle.net, that actually does translate into, in my BlizzCon demo bit, I've got 3 accounts. So I can have a triple go at it. Anyway, sorry, let's... am I going to make an updated rec guide when it needs to be updated? I suspect it depends on exactly what changes there's going to be. There are going to be some changes for 8.1. The hope will be that I can just do a companion guide to update rather than have to do the whole bloody thing again. We will see. What are my thoughts on the survey that's talked about on Reddit? Well, here's the thing about the survey. Whether or not any individual screenshots are fake or not doesn't matter. It's not new what they're doing. And I know everyone's making a big deal out of it, like, oh, this is new. No, it's not. They've been doing this thing for years. It will only be new when they start sending surveys out to people who are playing the game. The fact that they send surveys out to people who unsub is nothing new. They do that. And even the style of those surveys is the same. Because we came across the thing on Reddit where someone was talking about, oh, they're even asking to go on Skype and have a voice conversation, like a voice interview. And I'm thinking, oh, is that right? So I did some digging and I found blue posts from years ago, several expansions ago, where an actual blue community manager was talking about just that. So even that's something they've been doing for years. The thing is that they're doing it for people who've stopped playing. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't do that, but the thing is, as soon as someone has made the decision to stop, it's not easy to get them back. It's not impossible. I'm not saying they shouldn't try, but it's not easy. Where they should be focusing on their efforts are the people who are currently playing, but who may not be in a few weeks' time, unless they're given some sort of like assurance that things are going to work out. So you may hear game sounds here. It's really loud on the PTR for some reason. Right, so which talent was I supposed to take then? Hold on. Holy Avenger, is that the one? Hold on, is that the one I'm supposed to check? Oh, Avenging Crusader. Oh, okay. Right. Oh, right. I haven't actually set up anything on the PTR for Holy. Yes, he's still all nice and golden. So it works with that talent as well for Holy. So yeah, in terms of the surveys thing, I think what it is, it's a little bit like the thing they did a few weeks ago where they gave out that 3-day trial to selected accounts that didn't have Battle for Azeroth, which, as many of you explained to me, wasn't actually really a 3-day trial. It's a bit of a fiddle. But anyway, it doesn't matter. And I thought, oh, that's unusual. I don't remember them ever doing that before. I'm not saying I don't remember them ever offering those trials before, but it's tended to be at the end of an expansion when they're trying to hype up the next expansion and get people interested in the next expansion. I've never heard of it being done before the first patch of an expansion has even launched. However, several other people said, yes, they have done that before. So it's possible that the reason why I don't remember that is because it has extra significance now. And if they've done it in the past and I've seen it, I've like not considered it all that unusual. Whereas because we know that BfA is, well, tanking, quite frankly, because we know there are real problems with it, and I don't just mean from an objective point of view, I mean for the fact, you know, people are basically leaving the game. Everything that they're doing from a marketing point of view has added significance. So it's quite easy to then blow it out of proportion. And the surveys thing, I think, is a case of that. They're not doing anything different to what they've done before. You know, in fact, the news really, quite frankly, is that they're not doing anything different to what they've done before, because they bloody well should be. They should absolutely be doing. I'm fine with BfA. I think overall it's still a good game. You know, you've got to bear in mind, well, obviously it's my opinion, but, you know, there's World of Warcraft. In terms of other games I've got Star Wars The Old Republic, I've got Lord of the Rings Online, I've got Elder Scrolls Online. I love Elder Scrolls Online playing casually. I have not played that thing since BfA launched, because what time I have to play computer games, I am spending on World of Warcraft. I was, as some of you may know until recently, spending a bit of time doing Lord of the Rings Online as well, because I was doing videos on it. And that stopped because I've not quite got so much time, but I'm still prioritising what time I have for World of Warcraft. So I still enjoy playing it. It's just that it's not as good as it should be. But it's still better, in my opinion, than my other alternatives. Asmongold said the biggest problem with WoW is the community. What's that even supposed to mean? What's that supposed to mean? You're going to have to explain that statement, because that statement in isolation just sounds like someone saying, because people don't agree with me, then we don't get one message to the developers, and therefore the developers don't know what to do, which would be a nonsense. So I'm sure there must be more to that. You'll have to explain that statement in a bit more detail. You're happy with the content in BfA. You've got plenty of things to do. Class design is hurting. Class design has been a shambles. Absolute shambles. I mean, I've said for a long time that I just think that whole approach to class design is fundamentally wrong. But this expansion, it's been pretty bad. You can't enjoy it because you can't enjoy the content if your character isn't fun. I mean, this is the exact point I make all the time. You know, if they make a mess of raiding, like, you know, if some of the raid bosses are not very good in a raid, which is actually very unusual, but it can happen. Mithrax for melee is, I suppose, a classic example. Then, okay, that's bad, but it hurts the raiders. You know, if something's like, for example, getting Azerite gear from Mythic Plus Dungeons, that's been a shambles. But that hurts just the people who do Mythic Plus Dungeons. If islands are a load of shit, then that hurts the people who wanted to do islands. And so on. It just works out like this. But if they get class design wrong, that hits everybody. Because everybody, no matter what they want to do in the game, plays a character. So class design is the... I mean, it's the most attacked department within the game development, you can certainly argue. And to a certain extent, I understand that they have a very difficult job, arguably the most difficult job, but it is the one you've got to get right. The community can certainly be an issue. Oh, hello, missing it. As a result of Blizzard at times, but the community is a result of Blizzard actions. If they had more interaction from the overall atmosphere, would be much better. I totally agree. I think all you have to do is you have to look at communities of other games. And where a community seems pretty good, you also have to notice that there's a lot more engagement with the development team. How the community is I agree with that, is largely down to the fact, it's down to how well the game studio manages the community. You know, they need to provide some leadership, and they don't. WoW's still quite good, but there's something off. If you think of gearing from Mythic Plus, it's a little too RNG. Yeah, the gearing in Mythic Plus, the Azerite gear specifically was the problem. Because Azerite gear is the thing for BfA. It is the way we customize our characters in BfA. And it's inaccessible to people doing Mythic Plus. Now, okay, they've come up with a system which means that it'll be fine in 8.1. But they should have had something like that from the start. They should never have let BfA go live with such a predictably bad system. For some reason, the classes feel pretty boring. Well, that's another thing. So in terms of class design, yes, the boring aspect of it, I mean, obviously that's subjective, but I do know that one thing that Brian Helinka is tasked with, well, obviously he's been parachuted in, he's going to make changes. There will be changes to class design. I just don't know when. I mean, the problem is you've got 3 times as many specs as you've got class designers. So, you know, they can only work on so many at once. It might take quite a lot of the rest of BfA to get it, you know, because they basically need to change their mindset on class design. As the British Asmongold, you should... I'm not the British Asmongold. How am I the British Asmongold? Anyway, generally he was saying that WoW players were spoiled compared to other games and they complain more than other games communities. No, I don't agree with that. I mean, spoiled in terms of the fact that we play a game that's a very good game, but we're not spoiled. It's not like you go into a computer shop and say, here's £40, I'd like a computer game, and they give you a bucket, right, draw lots to see which game you get. You choose the game you want to play. Everyone else has the option of playing World of Warcraft. It's just that in BfA, lots of people have taken the option of not playing BfA. That's the problem. You're just tired of the glorified gambling simulator has become. Well, this is it. Well, I keep talking about the RNG aspect anyway. It's not the amount, because people keep mixing it up with, oh, it's the amount of RNG. It's nothing to do with the amount of RNG. It's the type of RNG. It's the implementation that's the problem. RNG, of course, has always existed in this game, in every RPG. But you want it to be predictable to a certain extent. You wish you could paste Greg Street's picture here with the text, miss me. Do you know what? Oh, I didn't read it in the end. So, yeah, Greg, old ghost crawler. So, I noticed over the years since he left Blizzard, he would still often talk about games, you know, the Blizzard games, but World of Warcraft most especially, of course. But what he'd always make a point of doing is not wanting to comment on current situation. He would only recant stories of when he was there, because he would always say, because I can't really say what's going on there now. I noticed a post from his quite recently where he seemed to not be doing that, but the problem is I was just browsing quickly and I didn't fully read it and I forgot to go back and find it. I should do that now, because he just seemed to me that I don't know, that he was being a bit more positive. Preach already is British. He's even Northern. Can't even have that one. Remove Titanforge altogether. Yeah, you see, the thing is, the problem with Titanforge is it does exactly what Blizzard want it to do. Blizzard want Titanforging to extend the lifetime of a loot table. And it does. So, unless there was a massive backlash, like no flying in WoW level backlash, they will never remove Titanforging, because it does what they want it to do. It's just that it's one of those systems that is not to our benefit. At the same time, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world either. I'll tell you another thing. There's not actually that many people seem overly bothered by it, because I thought, and I was completely wrong about this, when... Oh, dear. All right, okay, thank you. I'll have a look at that in a moment. I'll have a look at it now. When... what was it now? Oh, God, I've got to accept things. I'll read it in a moment, actually. So, when... shit, I've completely forgotten what I was talking about. Oh, yeah, right. So, in January, they said... because weapons were coming back into the game, getting rid of our artifact weapons, and they said, but it's okay, because weapons won't Titanforge. Then we found out in the beta that they were Titanforging. And it was like, ooh, people going, oh, hang on a minute, we weren't going to Titanforge here. Then they tried to make out that that was a bug and that they weren't Titanforging. But they do Titan Forge, don't they? I'm pretty sure they do. And but no one's making a fuss. So everyone's obviously happy about it. Preach made a video that I thought was interesting. His main point was the game currently has various methods of gaining free loot, which can get you up to high item level. So players never need to learn how to do dungeon or play the class. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I am appalled at how little effort I've had to put in to get in the gear I have now. I've got, what, 371, 372 item level? And what do? Nothing. I do like 1 or 2 mythic dungeons a week. That is it. That's it. Next week it'll probably be a bit higher because I'll get another 380 or maybe a 385 Azerite piece. So unless it happens to occupy a slot for which I've already got something of that item level, I'm hoping for a Jessus Howler. I always hope for a Jessus Howler. Never get it. And the number of times I've done Tol de Gore as well. I have done Tol de Gore in some of the shittiest affix. Well, all affixes are shit for Tol de Gore. But I've done Tol de Gore with Sanguine. I've done it with God knows what. It's horrible. And I still can't get Jessus Howler. But yeah, so it's likely to go up a little bit more now. I don't even do Heroic Uldir. Like, the guild I'm in now is doing an alt raid Heroic Uldir. But they've chosen to do it tonight. Where, you know... So I'm not doing that again. As I'm not British Asman. I'm not British anything. I'm not a version of anyone that I know of. Anyway, am I going to get a scepter and a crown? A what? What am I going to get a scepter for? Oh, do you know what I was thinking of though? Talking about hats, crowns, hats. I was thinking now. So last year, because this was on Halloween, I had my Halloween mask on. I'm not putting it on today because it's not Halloween. I was thinking of taking it into work tomorrow, though. And actually, just wearing it with... I've got a nice black leather hat. And I was thinking of... Because I wear all black at work, just like I do pretty much everywhere. I was thinking of actually just going in there. So when my class comes in, you know, I could just... It's a shame I haven't got any, you know, thingied hands. I could be like Freddy Krueger. See what they say to that. I like weirding out my students. That's why I was very disappointed to miss out on Talk Like a Pirate Day this year. Completely missed it. I was not happy. But yeah, no, I would agree with that point if that's what Peach was saying about the fact because you get access. The point is as well, you get access, all right, although that loot is still going to be behind people who do Mythic Plus dungeons and PvP and raiding at a high level, it's still way above what you need to do your solo stuff. Which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway. Crappy part about Azerite is that it's throttled. Whether a vendor or raid or cachers, blah, 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 are only Azerite and you can only get so much. Well, the problem with that is that in theory, well, in practice in a lot of cases, you actually want several configurations. Like, you might want 4 or 5 different shoulder slots. It might be different pieces for different traits, or it might be the same piece configured slightly differently for different roles. If someone alternates between, or it could be alternating between single target or AoE DPS, or it could be alternating between playing a healer, a tank, and a DPS. You know, so there's lots of configurations people will need and limited ways of getting them. That's the problem with Azerite. If it was just that, you know, there was like a BIS trait, try and get your BIS trait. Once you've got your BIS trait, you'd be all right. Then it wouldn't be as bad. But then, of course, it would be much less interesting because then there'd be no reason to collect other bits of Azerite. The whole concept is just an absolute mess. I don't think it was thought through at all. And I don't think it was thought through properly. I actually don't think it was thought through at all. You're not sure if they can Titan Forge, but you've only seen Weapons Warforged. Okay, maybe I'm wrong then. I was thinking I'd seen a Titan Forge one. I might be wrong then, in which case, never mind. WoW moves in the mobile store direction. No, don't joke about things like that. Legendaries had typical gearing alternatives. Yeah, well, yeah, let's not talk about Legendaries anymore. That were a nightmare. I mean, I saw a quote, someone, Soul Soul So Breezy saying today, which I think I agree with. The thing with legendaries was, if you had the vendors for legendaries like we did at the end of the expansion at the start, then all the complaints about legendaries that we had would have gone away because you could target them. You'd still have to, you know, take a certain amount of time to get them, but you could target them. But then the question would be asked, why are these legendaries? Why don't we just have them as major glyphs? Which is a fair point. So the legendary system was a nightmare. They've got rid of that, and then they've created another nightmare with the Azerite system. But anyway. So, hold on. Right, hold on. Got to go back. You're actually on the same boat as me. You do a couple of Mythic Plus in a week, and you're something like 371. Yeah, exactly. It's absolutely ridiculous. I shouldn't be able to do a plus 10. With the amount of effort I've put into the game, I should not be capable of doing a plus 10. But I am. You think the only way weapons Titanfall is if you get them from the Mythic Plus chest? Oh. Do you find communities bad as they release? In Diablo 3, you had a search function. It showed you a list, and you could join, for instance, Mythic Plus community, Heroic All Day community. Communities. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Do I find communities bad as they're released? You have to try and rephrase that. I'm not quite sure what you're asking. They can go, yeah, plus 10 would be just Warforging. That would be okay. That's what they said. If that's what it is, then that's okay. I just thought I'd seen a Titanforge one, but I could be wrong. I certainly don't have one. Yeah, they always did say it would Warforge. Class design this expansion would be frustrating. You re-roll to a Demon Hunter from your Priest. Because you wanted to DPS. You're waiting for 8.1 that did nothing to the spec. Which spec? Oh, you mean Shadow Priest? Well, they've done something to Shadow Priest, surely. I don't know whether it's enough. I don't know about Shadow Priest. Do you think we're out of luck until 9.0? Depends what you mean for. There are obviously some things, even if they acknowledge mistakes have been made with BfA, that they will not be able to deal with during BfA. But there are some things that they can. Class design. Do you know, actually, someone said something on my videos, and I wish I asked them where it's from. I'm going to have to try and check back and see if they've answered me. Because they said, because basically since Legion, their attitude has now been that they are prepared to make changes to classes during an expansion. That never used to happen. You might get little buffs and nerfs, but you didn't get changes to the classes. Okay, TBC you did a bit, but they were still monkeying about with the game then. And DK's in Wrath, okay, fine. But generally speaking, they did their changes at the start. Now that's changed. But someone on one of my comments said that, and I hadn't heard Blizzard say this, I may have missed it. Blizzard said that their metrics indicate that one of the main reasons for people leaving the game is class design changes. In other words, they choose a class to play for that expansion, and they're happy with it, and then it gets changed, and then they don't like it anymore, and they don't want to make a new one. If that's the case, then that's very surprising they do what they do. But if it were me, I would actually not tie class changes to expansions. I would have it completely separate. I wouldn't make a big thing about any changes to classes for an expansion. I would just get them working, because the game is fundamentally the same expansion to expansion anyway. Get them working, and then if every now and then something fundamentally does change about the game, then look at them. Just tweak them. Don't actively try and make them different from expansion to expansion. You're 6 out of 8 Mythic and you're only 373. Well, how does that happen? Seriously? You're only 373? How's that even possible? I'm nearly as high item level as you are. The Mythic Plus will also have Heroic Mythic Plus. Yes. Diablo's community feature is great. Sadly, the game is dead. Well, the community's feature in World of Warcraft, of course, it's only really been implemented, hasn't it? It's the sort of thing I think could take off, but it may be a bit too late. Maybe if they'd have done it a few years ago, it would have had more potential. I don't know. It is the sort of thing that I think takes time, though, if that's what you were asking, to develop, for people to see the benefit. I mean, look at Discord. You know, Discord took time for people to cotton on how useful a tool it would be. And for the communities to build up. So if you have 385 Azerite shoulders, they would have 3 empty slots for traits. You can use the traits you've extracted and apply them to 385 shoulder slot. Hold on. Have I missed something? Oh, collect Azerite gear and extract the Azerite traits at the Reforger. Yeah, okay, so that would make sense from a role-playing point of view. But from a we don't want you ever to have the gear you want point of view, it doesn't. Like I keep saying, their attitude to gear is they want us to get upgrades every single week. We have to feel that we're getting upgrades every single week, or at least regularly. But they don't want ever us to get to the end point of where, yes, this is my best gear. Because they only see things in terms of gear upgrades, power upgrades. I can only imagine, I've said this before, I can only imagine that the developers, when they played the game, were the loot-whorest people around. Because they cannot understand the concept of people being motivated by anything that's not a power upgrade. You know. So that's the attitude they're taking. I think it's wrong. I don't think we need to do that. I think you can keep the serious power upgrades for the proper hard end game content. And I think the rest of us will be perfectly happy getting things where we're rewarded with proper cosmetic gear. Loosen the strings on what we can use to transmog our characters and put bloody player housing in. You've got a 330 trinket and 345 gloves. Oh dear. What's your 330 trinket? What have I got? What trinket have I got? I mean, I've got the Dark Moon deck. I've got another trinket as well. I'm trying to find it. I almost got excited because I got a 370 trinket from doing Underrot this week. Unfortunately, it's the Underrot trinket. So it has a 1.5 minute cooldown, which is disappointing. But there you go. Communities in WoW. You can't browse in communities. You can only join a community by invite code. Okay. I mean, I'll tell you what I've been disappointed with, which is the guild UI. I don't find that at all useful. It was better as it was. I wish they hadn't rolled in the guild thing to the communities tab, because I don't like that. You've seen a lot of talk on YouTube lately about Junker Gnomes and a Tinkerer class. No, people just keep wanting it. That's just people wanting it, that's all. No. They'll never add that. Oh, the PvP on... You see, I don't do PvP, so I have 0 chance of getting that. That would actually be quite useful. My other one is a 370 syringe. It's got speed on it as well. 74 speed. You had a Mythic plus 10 cache a couple of weeks ago. It gave you a 385 unique equip ring. You already had equipped. Well, yeah, but it was 385. Presumably that was Titan Forge, if that's come off a plus 10. So that's not bad. Unless you're saying you already had the 385 version of it, in which case that was a bit lucky. Or unlucky. You'd like a bard or minstrel. I mean, the thing is, though, to be fair with BfA, at least when we get gear that we can't use anymore, you can do something with it. Like, as an enchanter, I always could do something with it, but it was a bit limiting. You ended up just really selling it. Whereas now we can scrap it, so there's at least some use for it. You feel like the game would be a lot better if raids lasted longer and we could more smaller patches with Mage Tower like rewards. Well, more cosmetic type rewards. I do not understand why Blizzard don't get that people go mad for it. I mean, the Mage Tower is a good case in point. the Mage Tower was a very popular piece of content. And it wasn't popular in the same way that sometimes they will see, because sometimes they just see how many people do a piece of content. And if it's a lot of people, that, oh, it's popular. May not be. If it gives a power reward, you can bet your ass the content itself is not necessarily popular. People just feel compelled to do it. But if it's a cosmetic reward, people are not going to do it if they really don't want to do it for a cosmetic reward. But at the same time, a cosmetic reward is a big draw. I mean, I did the Protection Paladin one just purely to get that mace, even though I have no intention of tanking. But if I ever did, the fact that I've got... It was a nice... It was more the fact that I didn't want to not be able to get it. You know, because it was going to be time limited as well. So time limited content where it gives you cosmetic rewards. If they want to get people subscribing to this game, that's what you do. And I don't know how many times I have to draw attention to the way Elder Scrolls Online does it. Because they are masters at it. Absolute masters. And I do not understand why they don't do the same sort of things. You understand the quest for each class they did not like, but the rewards in the Mage Tower were great. Well, it needs... I mean, you still had to do it. If you were really opposed to it, you wouldn't have done it. Most people. I mean, most of the... I didn't even think the skins looked all that good. But the fact that people would just do it for a unique skin, whether they liked it or not. I think it was the fact that it was cosmetic, and people... Everyone goes mad for cosmetics. And the second thing is, it was time limited. It's one of these things where you can think to yourself, no, I don't really like it. And then you think to yourself, but if you don't do it in the next few months, you'll never be able to get it. It's like, oh, I might want it in a year's time. I'd better do it. Hi, Dreadthane. Oh, dear. What kind of raid or raids do you think BfA will need in order to really wow me? Well, I'm not doing them, so it doesn't matter. But... I'll tell you the things I don't like in raids. Basically, I think the raid encounters, expansion after expansion, have always been good quality. Some raids, okay, have been a bit crap, but the vast majority of raids have been top quality. I think it's the one thing in the game that is always consistently done very well, probably outside the arts team's work. But what I don't like gimmicks. So that netball game you have to play on Gahoon, that's just crap. Anything that you're doing that isn't really a core part of the game, I don't really appreciate in a raid. So I didn't like all the vehicle stuff that came in Wrath, for example. But, you know, that aside, the other things I don't like is when they specifically put mechanics in the game that they know are going to limit the amount of melee you can take. Because that's crap for two groups of people. It's crap for melee players because it means you're limited just because of the class you chose. And it's crap for everyone else because if your guild happens to have a massive buttload of melee and not much ranged, or your ranged players are all thick as pig shit, then that means you're going to have to take ages killing that boss because you just don't have the roster for it. And that's unfair. You should just need in your roster a set number of tanks, a set number of healers, and a set number of DPS. And you know, it should be down to the skill of the player. So put in mechanic. We all will understand that occasionally there will be mechanics that favour certain classes. But when it favours an entire role, like, you know, range DPS are fine on it, melee DPS, forget about it. Tech 2 or 3 maybe. Other than that, piss off. I pronounce it melee specifically for World of Warcraft. The reason is this. First of all, melee, as a word, does not refer to what people use the word to mean in World of Warcraft. Melee doesn't mean close combat, and that's what people mean. Secondly, when I started playing World of Warcraft, everyone I heard pronounced it melee. So I just did. They probably weren't English, so it just stuck. But it was easy for me to do that because the word doesn't mean what it's supposed to mean. A melee is specifically a chaotic fight. I'm not about the chaos. I'm about order and discipline. Ian Hazacosta said so, Paladin. Anyway, sorry, let's get going. Yeah, You've been playing ESO, fun level. It's a very fun level. Basically, it's the reverse of World of Warcraft. Elder Scrolls Online, brilliant casual experience, brilliant, leveling experience. Crap end game, not because there's anything particularly wrong with the content, but because there's degenerate gameplay required for you to min-max, which is not good. World of Warcraft, much better end game, superb, with a few exceptions. Leveling experience and solo casual experience. Well, solo casual experience is not actually that bad, but the leveling experience is appalling. Absolutely appalling. Raiding as ranged is... Oh, go on, what's this? Is this going to be a Saki comment? Raiding as ranged is rough because the mechanics are so heavily movement-based, and with the exception of mages and hunters, you have next to no mobility. You feel like mobility is the real defining thing. No, nonsense. You just move. The thing is, there's range. Yes, all right, there's some times when you've got to move. But a lot of the time as range, you can just put yourself where you know you can hit your targets, switch targets, and you're already very close to where you have to move to. So your movement is limited. Whereas melee, you've got to run, like Talok, for example, you've got to run miles sometimes, especially towards the end of Phase 3, when all the ranged have dropped their shit in the middle because they couldn't be asked to move. You've got to go miles away. Pain in the arse. Anyway. You feel like Blizzard went overboard with the gold income spending, mount costs, repair costs, blah, 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 blah. Well, things like flask, food and pots only applies to the more serious players. And that's existed for quite a long time. I mean, it's certainly been there since Burning Crusade. In vanilla, flasks weren't that commonly used. People keep saying, oh yes, we use them all the time. Yeah, bullshit did everyone, because there wasn't enough materials for everyone to use them all the time. You needed Black Lotus. So it wasn't very common to use them all the time. Potions, yeah, so you'd still need your stock of potions. So it's sort of always been there. So if I'm not raiding, what content am I playing? Mythic Plus. I like Mythic Plus, yeah. But I specifically like Mythic, well, like any content. I only like doing it with people that I basically know. I don't ever want to pug it. If I ever have to pug it, then I will just not even do that, quite frankly. The story, like the solo questing stuff's still good. The war campaign's all right. That's reasonable. Obviously, I'd prefer it if the storyline made sense. But it's engaging enough. It's a bit like, it's like watching... do you know the film Doom? Okay. That film made not a lick of sense. But it's very watchable. You can watch that of a Friday evening with a can of beer. It's fine. You just enjoy it. And that's how I feel about this Warcraft story now. It doesn't stand up to any scrutiny. You wouldn't talk about it in a book club. But... you can just play it and enjoy it, and it does what it does. I'll just every now and then moan about this nonsense in it, and that's it. Do I feel that Blizzard dropped the ball on the questing from 1 to 120? Yes. The news player does not have a proper story mode. It has no story mode. The story, I keep saying this, I repeat it ad nauseum. The story, as you level in this game, is a nonsense. So here's the experience. Let's say you roll a human. Of course you do. And then let's say you roll a human paladin, because obviously. You're going to, first of all, well, let's say first of all, the first proper zone you're going to go to is Westfall, okay? So you go to Westfall and you're learning, first of all, there's this comedy CSI codswall up there. But second of all, you're learning that the war against the Lich King has made everyone poor and everyone's pissed off at the Kingdom of Stormwind. And then you mosey on your way, and then you start learning about Deathwing arriving, Twilight's hammer emerging, people worshipping the old gods, the coming cataclysm. And then you get to level 60, and you go off to Outland. Completely different story. Okay, whatever. Which never finishes. And then you come back, and then they say, can you go to Northrend now? We need your help in fighting the Lich King. To which you have to say, hang on a minute. When I was level 10, you told me that we'd defeated the Lich King, but it had made us all as poor as church mice. Now I've got to go off and fight him. It makes no sense. And then you also never come across Deathwing. Deathwing never puts in an appearance because it's a raid thing. You don't get to experience it. The storyline as you level up is a shambles. And the irony is, the absolute irony is, the leveling experience during vanilla, the 1 to 60 content, which I enjoyed, wasn't structured. It basically gave you a little taste about all the different aspects of the World of Warcraft lore, or at that time, the Warcraft lore. And I liked that. And then what they did is they changed it. Oh, better not show that. They changed it so that it was more ordered, more structured. And yet, it makes no sense. It's complete chaos now. Absolute chaos. And we've got shit quests in there, whereas you used to have good quests. So, they don't think things through. Anyway, so they went so overboard. Repairs and parts. Oh, okay. I mean, I don't think raiding's that expensive. I've never thought raiding's that expensive. You manage. Sort of okay. Most efficient way to raid is to buy a token. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Buy a token. 70, a couple of... Yeah, and you don't need it. You don't even need to get it that often either, just to pay for raid. I don't think raid's that expensive. I mean, some guilds will even, you know, as long as you'll agree to do a few runs for paying customers, will even supply you with mats. Some raiders don't pay anything. Don't even pay their repairs. What's my current opinion on the state of the game as of right now? Pre 8.1. I think it's a good game, but I think not only could it be, it should be a lot better. I think there's a lot of things they didn't think through. I think what they've done is they've had an idea and they've refused to accept any criticism of that idea. And an idea will never be a good idea the first time you have it. It has to be subjected to criticism so that you can improve it. You don't have to abandon an idea just because it has criticism. You chip away at the weaknesses, try to bolster the strengths. If at the end of it, it's still not working, then it was a crap idea, bin it. But if you have to subject it to criticism so that it can be, improved. And if they don't, then that's why you'll end up with things. And then it comes out and then they go, oh, we didn't think about that. Why? Why didn't you think about that? Doesn't require a lot of brains to work out all the things that would have gone wrong with it. So that's my current opinion. So the current state of the game is still, it's a decent game. It's just should be a lot better. The designers have got their heads up their arses, and quite frankly, it's dark up there. They need to get it out. Started going downhill after Warcraft 3. That's a bit harsh, isn't it? Oh yeah, retcons. I've never known anything like it. I've never known a but of all the fantasy worlds I've been experienced to, either through literature or games, I have never known a system like Warcraft for retconning. It's quite ridiculous. It's literally the case that the most knowledgeable lore masters of the game on certain topics are actually clueless, because it's the sort of thing where they'll think, well, I know what the official line is sort of, but it could easily, if it's something that's related to BfA, you never know what's going to change around the corner. Absolute nonsense. I don't know how Nobble keeps up with it. But, and people like him. If there were a real life version of Westworld, I don't watch telly, so I don't know what Westworld is. I'm aware of it as two words that go together for a television program. That's all I know of it. Or Ready Player One. Don't know. Do you think Blizzard or Rockstar would be the ones developing? I have no idea what you're talking about. You'll have to ask that to other people who know what those words mean in the order you've put them in. Should be launching in... What should be launching in November? What, 8.1? I would think late November is much more likely than earlier on. You've got to bear in mind, first of all, if you look on the PTR, it's not ready yet. It's BlizzCon coming up, which means at the moment no one's doing anything because all the developers are getting ready for BlizzCon. That's where they've got to properly earn their keep. You know, it's the big show. So they've got to get that absolutely right. Zero development going on at the moment. Well, from the people who are involved in BlizzCon, that is, which will be all the senior ones, I would have thought. Then, after BlizzCon, they've all got to deal with their hangovers because it takes a while before they do anything sensible then. So, I cannot see it coming out before the last week of November, if I'm honest. Oh, you mean BfA should have been launched in November? Yeah, okay, yeah, it should. But they knackered that, didn't they? By pinning their colours to the mast with that 21st of September launch. So that they could get the Allied race pre-ordered out. Mop was iffy at launch too. Isle of Thunder patch saved the expansion. See, well, I don't know. I liked Mr. Pandaria. I didn't like all the bloody dailies I had to do at the start. That aside, I thought Mr. Pandaria was an excellent expansion in lots of different ways. I thought it was superb. I thought the raiding was great. All right, the dungeon system was crap. There was no dungeon system. Well, okay, they had challenge mode, but that wasn't for me. But the raids were good. The general storyline, it was the first time they'd ever done new storyline in the game. They've never done a new storyline since, and they didn't do one before. So it's the most original expansion. You know, it was actually quite good. It was a very good expansion, I thought. I know some people were put off by the Kung Fu Panda thing, which you could argue is a bit of a failure on marketing if that's true, because it was very clearly modelled on Kung Fu Panda, but in a way that they knew they couldn't be done on copyright, because they could say, I think you'll find in Warcraft 3, we were the original Kung Fu Panda. So they got to do what they want. What do I think of Blizzard's big announcements will be on this year's BlizzCon? I think it has to be Old Gods related. If I have to have a gamble on what they're going to say, I think the faction war is pretty much done. And I think they're going to be now hyping up the Old Gods aspect of the expansion, which is the true story of the expansion, I believe. So I think it will be that. Lore question. Why is Thrall aspect of Earth but not Magni? I don't know. I don't know. I just don't... the thing is, if Thrall was no longer the aspect of Earth, and he doesn't seem to have done an awful lot in that regard recently either, it's like, what would you do with him? You know, would there be calls for him to become War Chief of the Horde again? Even though he seems to have lost his balls recently. Someone would have to sew them back on. Mop had something that Legion of BfA are lacking class design. Well, the class design was also better. Also, they still had 25-man raids, which is way better. It's all a sham to bait you into subscribing, then dangling carrots to try and keep you sub. Well, the thing is, I think they could more effective. Obviously, it's a business. Obviously, they need people to subscribe, whether or not they actively play the game much. All right, but there's ways to do that they are not using. They should have regular events which reward desirable cosmetic rewards. And the thing is, toys will work to a certain extent. Pets will work to a certain extent. You know, specific cosmetic gear will work to a certain extent, even though they don't do much of any of those things. But what will definitely work is player housing with unique player housing cosmetic items being brought out on a regular basis. You know, Like, Elder Scrolls Online quite regularly do events where all you have to do is, like, log in and do something for, like, you know, a weekend or something. You can bet your ass people are doing that. All right, they're not going to pay an expansion just to do a sub just to do that, but they're playing the game just to do that. I mean, I remember one weekend, and it's not the only one they've done it, but this was really there was a really nice item you could get for your player house. It was like a throne, and you could get as many as you wanted as well. You weren't limited to one. It cost nothing. It didn't cost any gold. It was sold by a vendor, but it was only available for one weekend. So you had to log in on that weekend or you're never getting it again. They do things like that with mounts as well. There's mounts that they bring out for like a few weeks and then it's gone. You're not getting it again. Which, of course, if you have a subscription, means you can pay for it with your currency. And if you don't, you have to buy it with real money. And then that's as good as a subscription for them. They could do that. Anyway. Sylvanas is going to save us all from the old gods because she cannot be controlled by them. She can... Oh, my God. I believe that she is going to save us, but I also believe she is being controlled by them, just not in, you know, as in she's been fooled into doing what they want. You'll see. You wait and see. She is, at the moment, she is their bitch. All right? She's going to come to her senses. She's going to realise that. And then she's going to do something and willingly step down from her position of leadership of the Horde and the Forsaken. Nathanos is going to be the leader of the Forsaken, and someone's going to lead the Horde. I don't care who. Maybe Thrall. Maybe Thrall comes back. You're noticing something right now, the community. Either the game is fine and people are complaining are jerks, or it's terrible and people are defending activism and our shields. Oh, well, I'd say it's polarised. That I don't think it is. I think that's just because most people who post on a forum have a very clear and definite viewpoint. And when people have very clear, definite viewpoints and they're not willing to accept any objection to them, they tend to be on one extreme or another. So I think it's just that those people are the loudest. So again, you see it on the forums, and it's like I was saying earlier in the video, you can sort of get the impression that a lot of people are like that, but it's a small, very loud minority. You think they missed the boat on that as well. The rewards should have been an important motivation, but the content has to be enjoyable. The content, of course, has to be enjoyable, but the problem that any MMO has is the content cannot last long enough. Like with a single player game, it's different. You can spend several years bringing out content that will only last a player for a few months, and that's fine. That player will pay their 40 quid, buy that game, play it. They might even pay twice as much for the special edition, play it, a few months later, done, get another game. And that's all fine. So in that sort of game, you don't have to put in these artificial speed bumps to the content. In an MMO, you do. And I think this is sometimes where a problem arises. If people play single player games and MMOs, they can sometimes see the time gating in MMOs as inherently bad. Now, some of the time gating I think is unnecessary, but you know, there has to be something to slow down your progress, because they can't have people burning themselves out quickly and then have nothing to do for months. You're looking forward to Zappy Boy being killed off once and for all. Well, the next time I get an opportunity to kill him, I'm gonna corpse camp him to make sure he doesn't just reincarnate, because that's what he must have done beforehand. That's all I'm going to say on the subject. You believe Boy King is not under old gods? You think from the Lion side it's Gen? No, no, no. The Boy King could only ever refer to, at the moment, Anduin. But you've also got to remember, if you're talking about those voices of Il'gynoth, which I'm guessing you are, then there's a few things. First of all, they're not truths necessarily. They're what the old gods want or wish. Sometimes they'll be lies, you know. So it doesn't. They're not prophecy. They're just what some old god servant said. Anyway, what are my thoughts on Horde players chanting Zappy Boy for War Chief? That's fine. If they want to throw away their vote, that's entirely up to them. You don't buy the time getting an excuse. You can slow down progress with things like progressive gear and attunements. It doesn't all have to be RNG based. No, it shouldn't be RNG based at all. Like the Titan Forging shouldn't be in. I agree with that. But the thing is that Blizzard aren't going to change their mind on that. I think there should be more content. I think they should their rewards should be more heavily weighted in favour of cosmetic rewards. I think the power rewards should be there for people who need them. And I think the rest of it should be cosmetic. Apart from anything else, power rewards only last you a few months at most. Cosmetic rewards last you for years. I mean, it's an absolute no-brainer. I don't get it. Hi, Gary. I think it's going quite well. Did I start late? No. No, I don't. Oh, have you? I don't know. You haven't had a change in time, have you, or anything? Because this is normally halfway through where we would be. Unless your clock's done something. Changed from summertime or something. When a new raid comes out, everything prior to that should not be irrelevant for gearing. The Vulpera cannot be an allied race. And it's not that they can't be an allied race because they're a stupid race. They can't be an allied race because they're not an allied race. That's all there is to it. They could, in theory, make them a playable race. That's not the same as an allied race. But they won't even do that because new races are always based on the expansion that they come out at. And they didn't introduce Vulpera as a playable race in this expansion, which means they're not going to. You don't understand the hatred for Zappy Boy. No one hates Zappy Boy. He's just pathetic. It's not the same as hatred. Oh, it's us that went back, did it? Okay, fine. I knew someone had done something. One piece of gear, but there was years between content, months of building for one piece in the short time frame for raids is silly. Well, here's like, I mean, literally, I know that there would be a ridiculous number of people that if player housing was in the game, and they did it well, they would play this game just for that. Because I know there's people who do that for other games where it's in. Because the amount of scope there is for really... Because it's the next extension from your character. People like, customizing their characters. But they limit even that in us. Even Transmog, which was fantastic when it was introduced, but although it wasn't hardly unique, it'd been in other games long before, it was still restrictive. Like, I remember... playing the alpha and the beta and looking at some of the gear that some of the Culturans wearing, some of those smart leather coats and stuff. And I was thinking, wow, that looked fantastic. I wish I could get that. And then I sort of realised that even if they introduced that for Transmog, which they haven't yet as far as I can see. Excuse me. Got some other swig of cough syrup. Even if they do, I will not be able to transmog it because I'm a plate wearer, which is ridiculous. In Lord of the Rings Online, although my main character is also a heavy armor wearer, I can wear, whatever. I could wear a dress if I wanted as transmog. And I don't just mean around the city. While I'm out, I could fight in a wedding dress. No one would give me a second glance. It's perfectly fine. And it's ridiculous that we can't do that. Be far better. People would just be able to then customize their character however they want. And I don't get them. But then the next step up from character customization is your own house. You play a house where there's even more scope for individualization. WoW needs armor die already. Well, apparently they say that there are technical issues with that. I think in reality, it's because they recolor the hell out of all sorts of armor and give it away as different bits. But anyway. Bring on the allied places with unlocks like Star Wars Galaxies. I mean, technically allied races are sort of unlocked, aren't they? There is an unlock mechanism to get in them. You were talking about the new currency system. Oh, was you? Sorry. Hold on. Well, no, the main reason why we used to grind forever in vanilla is because the bosses dropped less loot than they do now for twice as many players. That's why it took longer. Where would Vulpera's starting zone be? Well, they could always... They don't... Well, yeah, okay, that's another thing. It doesn't... I don't know. Somewhere... There's Durotar is a desert. Maybe they could start where the orcs start. Maybe you could have another little island appear with some long-lost Vulpera. But it really doesn't matter because they're never going to be in the game as a playable race. All there is to it. End of story. What are my thoughts on guild or community garrisons? I like... Guild houses definitely should be in as well. Obviously, that's a natural accompaniment to player housing. I don't know about the community housing. I suppose... Because that... I'm just thinking of the mechanics, how that would work. Because that's a different thing. But guild houses, certainly. Because guild houses would then allow you to have, like, trophies for the achievements of that guild, like, position there. And I was saying this before. I was saying this the other week. So now that they've got the leaderboard, you could even have a situation where you go into someone's guild house, so you've got permission to go in, or you're a member of that guild, and you walk past it, and you can see like a shield with some trophy for a particular raid, and it will even tell you what world rank your guild got. It could have like a blue ribbon for Alliance, red ribbon for Horde, and then the number there would be your guild's rank. If it got in the top 100, I know it's not counting anyone that's not in the top 100 for each faction. That sort of thing would be pretty special. So many things. So many things you can do if they just, like, took off their loot whore goggles and started to appreciate what you can do with, you know, with, cosmetic rewards, really. Sitting on a gold mine with cosmetic rewards in-game. Yeah, spell animations. See, the thing is, there's all these achievements already in-game. It wouldn't even be extra content. All these achievements in-game. Like at the moment, in 8.1, they're redoing some spell animations. Why? Why don't they just give them out as rewards for certain achievements in-game? Like the Green Fire Warlock quest in MoP. Do that. You know, instead of just changing an animation. Because some people might prefer the old animation. What are they going to do? Then you have to bring out glyphs. They're missing a trick. Do it for achievements. You do this achievement and you get this new spell animation. Right? Or you can choose to have it. You know. Do I think Alliance raiding is dying? At the top end, it's pretty bloody close to it, isn't it? I certainly don't see an exodus of Horde guilds running to Alliance because it's so expensive and some of them don't want to play Alliance. It is way less populated than Horde, and obviously the further up you go, the worse it gets. How do I think Blizzard could address the issue? It's too late to fix it. The only thing they can do is to remove factions from PvE, which I don't think have any place together anyway. I don't think factions have any place in PvE. They only exist for PvP. But there's nothing they can do to redress the balance now, whilst maintaining two factions in the way they do. Prefer old animations? You mean like the green nature theme of every druid used to be? I don't necessarily mean old as in from, well, some of them are that old. I mean, all right, then the current ones, the ones that have been changed in 8.1. Some people, like I know, for example, that the new animation for the new effects for Avenging Wrath is not to everyone's liking. Some people prefer the one we have now. So why don't they get the choice? Why don't you put the new one behind an achievement that already exists in the game? Some achievement that takes a while. You know. I mean, take the Pathfinder achievement, for example. So, obviously, a lot of us have now got our Pathfinder Part 1. But I know that loads of people don't, because we have this, well, we have this in the last two expansions specifically. When the Pathfinder Part 2 becomes available, loads of us will do that really quickly, because it won't take long, and we'll have flying. But there'll be still people working towards it months later. Why not give them a bit of motivation to do it more quickly by giving you a mount with it? You know, do the Pathfinder Part 1, get a ground mount, and even if it's a recolour of one that already exists, that would be disappointing. I don't think they should. But all right, do, you know, I mean, make some effort, I suppose. And then when you get Pathfinder Part 2, get a flying mount. And there's already achievements in the game for spell animations you could easily do as well. Let's have a look. You're only 53 in the Hall of Fame. Well, many guilds will never feature in the Hall of Fame. Feel sorry for the people who would have come 101st, because they get nothing. They're as worthless as someone finishing in like 5,000th position. They did that with Dalaran Brilliance and then took the intellect buff out of the game. Now you have the intellect back. They didn't give back the animation. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yes. The reason why they don't do the quest for the animation is because you get people that complain, why should they have to do the quest? It should just be given to them. No, I don't think people would make that much of a fuss. Because how is it different to the Green Fire quest for Warlocks in MoP? People didn't complain that they should just be able to get it. They loved the fact that there was some content for them. And do you know what? Everyone that wasn't a Warlock was jealous of them because they got a special quest. And the rest of the classes didn't. You know. Same with the Mage Tower. You didn't have people complaining, oh, I pay my money. Or not enough people. I pay my money. I should just be able to get this transmog. No. It was something to do. It was something to look forward to. I mean, you know there's something wrong with Alliance raiding when at the point there were 100 Horde guilds that had killed Mythic Cahoon, there were what, 12 Alliance guilds? 12. Grim. Like, you know, grim. Literally 8 times as many Horde guilds at that top end. City of Heroes way back when they had spell customization. You don't get why Blizzard cannot do this. So as a pally, when you pop your rings, they are red. They could do all sorts of things. Cosmetic rewards are basically limitless. And the thing that annoys me most of all is it's easy to do. It doesn't cost a lot. You need artists to do it, but the actual work for a lot of... All right, some stuff will be particularly special. You know, for very special things, you'll bring out some special stuff. And obviously, it's going to take a certain amount of resource to put player housing into the game and all the rest of it. But once you've done that, each individual little thing is a piece of piss bit of work for that team of artists. People flip tables over the Mage Tower. I didn't see any of that. Obviously, you're going to get someone complaining about everything. People complain. I didn't see a significant number of people complaining. The Mage Tower, even on the forums, as far as I could tell, was an overwhelmingly well-received piece of content. All right, see you later, Petri. You would love to play Alliance, but sadly recruitment won't allow. Well, I mean, that's exactly the reason why the guild I'm in now, with whom I raided in Legion when they were Alliance are now Horde. If they made faction-free transfer, that still would not fix it. No, it wouldn't. Because you'd be getting a lot of people. Because people will have friends there now as well, even if they're not in that guild. Basically, by changing faction, you are putting yourself in a position. Basically, Blizzard are telling you which of your friends you're allowed to play with, which is wrong. You know, it's like saying, okay, I want to play with my brother or friend or whatever, and I want to do Mythic Plus dungeons with them. But they're Alliance, I'm Horde. Blizzard say you can't play together. That's what they're doing. It's not even like it makes sense within the context of the storyline and the world, because it doesn't. Yes, there's factions sort of at war, but there's always been NPC characters who are well received in both factions. Why can't we, Slayer of Worlds, we are like gods on Azeroth. You know, we've killed dragon aspects, elemental lords, you know, bloody planets, titans, keepers, God knows what. We've done everything apart from punch up a void god. You know, why the hell can we not be, you know, revered enough to pass from one city to another? Of course we could. I changed factions before I decided to be casual. Yeah, no. Yeah, that's exactly why. I changed because I joined a Horde guild for raiding purposes. I didn't change faction to be sociable. I changed because I was still a Mythic Raider then, and I wanted to be able to get faster progress in Mythic raiding, basically. But then I had to go casual. So, and then obviously I wasn't then going to change back to Alliance. So I just stayed as Horde and joined a guild that would take me as a social. What do I think of being forced to play Alliance as Alliance in the next raid? Forced? See, actually, it's probably no bad thing being Horde in the next raid because you get to kill Gnome. I hope. And now we save turtles. Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, you don't have to save the turtles. Actually, do you know what? Everyone keeps talking about choice in BfA. Completely misguided. We get no choice at the Siege of Lordaeron. We get no choice in the Darkshore quest. We also get no choice, realistically, with the Sourfang quest. Where we do have a choice is whether we decide to save the turtles, because you don't have to save the turtles. You can just go AFK. Enough turtles will make it to the water if you wait long enough, but in the knowledge that many of them will perish. Which, if you think about it, is not a cruel way of looking at it, because the crabs and the seagulls, which, bear in mind, we are killing for no good reason, they get some dinner out of it. Quite what a seagull's going to do with a turtle anyway, I have no idea. How they're supposed to break into that shell. And I know eagles will sort of pick them up and then drop them on a rock. But, you know, I don't see seagulls ever doing that. They've got webbed feet. All boils down to the Blood Elves. In Vanilla, Horde was PvP, Alliance PvE. Possibly, I'm not sure. I mean, Alliance PvE because it had certain things. I think Paladins were better than Shamans in terms of the utility. And also Dwarf Priests had Fear Ward, even though it wasn't strictly needed, because Warriors could stand stance to avoid fear, because they could go into Berserker stance, avoid the fear, and then go back into defensive stance. Because fears were always telegraphed anyway, you always knew when it was coming. But yeah, it seemed generally better to be Alliance for raiding. Let's have a look, what am I doing? Most players used to like the Alliance races more because they were, apart from gnomes, superior. Horde are ugly and boring. The thing I really can't forgive about Horde, I don't mind them being ugly. I cannot tolerate their boring buildings. They're just dull. I mean, Orgrimmar, Orgrimmar has even had a facelift since vanilla, and yet it's still just skins and mud. A bit of iron here and there. It's so primitive. They can do better than that. What can be done to help Alliance increase their numbers? Nothing. At this point, I think nothing. Other than just letting PvE dissolve those faction borders, and then people can play whichever race they want. Now, if a particular guild, for role-playing purposes, decides that it just wants to only accept Horde characters, then fine, they can do that. Or Alliance characters. Just like there are guilds out there who will only accept Night Elves. You know, if they want to RP like that, that's totally fine. That's up to them. But it allows people who don't give a shit about that, who just want to play the game with their friends, to then just have whatever in that guild. Just like you can in several other MMOs. I mean, I don't know how the seagulls were even picking up the bloody turtles, quite frankly. Unless they've got suction cups on their feet. I mean, I'll grant you, you know, we can't just assume that the seagulls in Azeroth are the same as the seagulls in our world. You know, maybe they have got suction cups for feet. They just don't look like they've got talons. For the attack on Dazar'alor, I'm glad you said that because I always forget the name of that place. You do your factions bosses, then get an appearance. Yes, I've noticed that. Yeah, I know that. You played human for the starting area. Starting area is not even that good. It's, in fact, it was ridiculed in one of the early car bots, wasn't it? Because basically, the human starting experience is now this, right? So they first of all tell you to go and kill some wolves in the area. By the way, there's a hell of a lot of them, and they're not very aggressive. So I don't know why you have to kill them. So you kill them, you go back, and they say, thanks very much. Now, we think there's some Blackrock spies about. Can you go and sort them out, please? So you literally walk 10 yards, and there's a load of orcs with a massive telescope like this, 10 yards away from the main Alliance building. And you think, oh, there's an orc there, stood not even behind the tree, next to the tree, with a huge telescope. Do you think that's a Blackrock spy? I think it probably is. Knock it on the head. I just worry, what must that experience be like for a new player? People being told, oh, well, you should try. Have you not tried World of Warcraft? Wow, it's been out for 14 years. How can you not have played it? It's fantastic. It's got all this rich lore and all the rest of it. So this intelligent player starts playing, and then they're given this. Their first quest, kill a load of wolves. They're not aggressive, but we want you to kill them, right? Second, kill some spies. They're not hiding. They're not stealthed. They're there. Big old telescope right in front of your face. You stand in front of them. And they don't put the telescope down and go, ooh, and run away. No, they just stand staring at you. I'd love to know what people think of that, who've just come to the game, never having played it before. I would love to know what people think about that. Because it didn't used to be that stupid. It really didn't used to be that stupid. It is now. Anyway. You think Classic is a nice idea? Classic's an overdue idea. They should, of course, do that. It's not fair for the people who actually like that version of the game that they can't play it anymore. Like I always say, with a single-player game, you've got the disc. As long as you can maintain a computer with an operating system that will run it, you can play a game for years. When it's an online-based game, unfortunately, when it changes, you lose it. And it's a shame. And they should always try and maintain that experience for people who want to play it. There'll be a lot of things. Obviously, it won't be the vanilla experience. There will be no vanilla experience in many ways. Add-ons existed then. Add-ons will exist for it now. all the add-ons we have now in the live version of the game, you won't be able to use those in the Classic, of course, different system. But people will still make better add-ons than were available during Vanilla. There will be more guides. Guides are already coming out, although some of the guides just make me laugh. It's absolutely ridiculous. Some of the guides, it's just laughable. When I see leveling guides, I don't know, I just fall about. I really do. I've almost thought about watching a video just to see what it's like. But there will be guides which were much rarer back then. You know. So there's no element, there's no real vanilla experience. It's just the vanilla game as they can best release it. Which is fine, because that's fine too. It doesn't have to be the vanilla experience. It'll never be the vanilla experience. Like, you know, I can watch some Doctor Who's from when I was like 4 years old. And it's not the same experience now as it was when I was watching it as a 4-year-old. But I can still watch them. I can still enjoy them. And if someone were to watch those same stories for the first time now, it wouldn't be the same experience that I had when I watched it as a 4-year-old. Because apart from anything else, people would be saying, God, that's shit, the special effects there. Do I think the GCD change could be Blizzard trying to make it feel slower now before they bring Classic out? No. I think they have other ulterior motives behind that. I don't know what they are exactly. I don't believe it's anything to... I don't think they're doing anything to build up Classic. You've got to bear in mind they didn't want to do Classic. They're doing Classic WoW begrudgingly. They've now appreciated the fact that it's a good thing to do. In fact, I worry because I said for the longest time that I would only see them bringing out a vanilla version of WoW when the live version starts to get into its senior years, its autumn years. And it could well be that that is what's happening. Might not be. But either way, they're certainly not doing anything to harm the retail version, which is what they want to succeed for the... Because they don't care, quite frankly, whether the Classic flops or not. You know, because if it does flop, they'll just say, told you so, we didn't think people were that interested in it. And if it doesn't, well, great, that's fine. That's, you know, so it's win-win for them. Absolute win-win. GCD changes one step closer to making the game more playable on console. Maybe. I still don't think they're actually trying to make World of Warcraft for console. I do believe that whichever Warcraft... Well, I do believe that they are planning a game for console, which might be a Warcraft-based game, or it might be one of their other IPs. And it would not surprise me if they are trying some things out in WoW as research for that console game. I just don't think World of Warcraft. But it could be World of Warcraft 2. I don't discount that possibility. But I'd be amazed. David Tennant, the best Doctor. No. Pat Troughton was the best Doctor, followed by Sylvester McCoy. Now, if Peter Davison had have played the Doctor like he did in the Caves of Androzani, he would have been head and shoulders the best Doctor, because that portrayal was superb. Unfortunately, that he chose his final ever episode to play it like he always should have done. That was disappointing. I didn't understand with the David Tennant Doctor why he had to put on that ridiculous accent. Why he couldn't have just played it as David Tennant. I don't know why he had to be that Cockney wide boy. Didn't get on with that at all. Console can only happen. In fact, the only limited factor is healing, which they would just... Elder Scrolls Online has a console version. There's healing in that. But yeah, obviously, that's what I mean. I don't think they'll ever make World of Warcraft for the console. I do believe that they will make a game for a console, a big one. And it is entirely possible that they're trying some things out in World of Warcraft for it. Now, whether it's a World of Warcraft game, but it would be a new game. And I absolutely believe it would have modern systems. So it wouldn't have targeting It would have like smart targeting systems. And with healing, much more likely to be area of effect, like, you know, frontal cone or beam type things, like in ESO. You've said before, the GCD change reduced the gap between good and bad players, like most of the changes in BfA. But they're reversing some of those soon. They may reverse the GCD change. I hope they do. I don't know about that, though. Hi, Theox. We'll have to wait and see. But I think they are now of the opinion that they did narrow that gap too much. Vanilla is casual game and you played EverQuest. Yeah, I've heard about that. It was just... The thing is, though, those early MMOs, like people call them hardcore, you know, I suppose you can see why. But it seemed to me that it wasn't necessarily difficult, it was just time-consuming. A hardcore player was simply someone who just spent a ridiculous amount of time doing something that was no more difficult than playing the game casually. As far as I can tell, having never played it myself, but just having talked to people who did. So, but no, for me, WoW was my first MMO. Xbox and PS4 have keyboard mouse support. Who gets a console, though, to use a keyboard and mouse? I mean, just because you can. Isn't the purpose of it to chuck it down in the lounge and then play while, you know, you've got mates round and something? The prospect of WoW on consoles fills you with dread. Well, what about WoW on a mobile? Because as far as I'm concerned, I am quite sure they are developing a game for either the mobile or consoles. And I don't want to play either. But if they bring out a PC version, I'd much rather play a PC version of a game that's on console than a PC version of a game that's on mobile. If they change the combat system enough, it would be possible, like you said, area or skill shot. Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean. It would be a new game. You know, they wouldn't adapt World of Warcraft for a console. They'd just make a new game. It feels like someone at head office slapped Ian on the wrist and told him to play nice with the paying customers recently. I think there was certainly... I think inevitably there had to be some interference. You can't, as an executive of a company, see what's happened and not do anything. Now, whether what happened was sensible or not is another matter, but, you know. So vanilla is like running 500 Mythic plus 6s for 395 gear. Some of the stuff in vanilla was actually quite tough. Not the dungeons, obviously. Because people always say about, oh, the raids didn't have any mechanics. There's a load of nonsense. The people who say that only did Molten Core. Yeah, Molten Core was quite light on the mechanics, but it still had mechanics. Then Blackwing Lair, they got more and more complex the further you went into the expansion. And Karaj, AQ40 and Naxxramas were the equal of any raids we have now in terms of the mechanics. The thing is that now you've got to bear in mind we have like WeCorers and add-ons telling us when something's about to happen. We didn't have that in vanilla. You know, the add-ons were much more limited, but the actual experience of playing AQ40 and Naxxramas is no different to the experience of doing the raids now. When you balance when you consider everything, your classes also didn't have as many abilities. So you didn't have as many ways of dealing with things. You also had more people. But then that was a good, you know, that could be an easier thing as well. The fact that you had loads more people, like 40 people, also means you didn't really, apart from lower Theb you need everyone alive. But a lot of bosses, it was not uncommon to kill it for the first time with half the raid dead. So you didn't actually need 40 people to kill most of the bosses. Quick thoughts on the new 8.1 updates. Which particular updates are you thinking of? Do you mean class updates? You don't remember any raids of vanilla being comparatively difficult to Mythic TOS? Yeah, no. I would no. For the thing is, people are comparing Kill Jaden now with the character we've got now. If you were to play Kill Jaden back in vanilla, it would have been impossible. That's why. People are just comparing the mechanics in the game. You've got to think about, it's not just the mechanics, it's the tools you've got. It's a bit like, what's easier? To dig a 1 meter deep hole or to dig a 10 meter deep hole? Well, you'll say, well, dig a 1 meter deep hole. But what if you've got a big ass fracking drill and a spade? Well, all of a sudden, the 10 meter hole is a lot easier than the 1 meter hole now. It depends on the tools you've got. The tools we had in vanilla were basically not a lot. We certainly didn't have things telling us, oh, this is about to happen. This is about to happen. This is about to happen. You had to literally look for tells, and sometimes didn't even get that. Oh, I remember Thoughtbot, yeah. A lot of the developers played Classic WoW, though. But this is sometimes their problem. Based off personal accountability, modern content is much more difficult. There is more personal accountability, but at the same time, what you're required to do is not that hard. The thing that makes it hard is people not doing what they know they should do. People's fixation, which was always the case, on damage meters or healing meters, is what makes the encounters more difficult than they really should be. Simple as that. And more mechanics is irrelevant. More mechanics doesn't make it more difficult. Because most of the mechanics that we have in the modern raids are mechanics we had from vanilla. They're the same mechanics. Every now and then they come up with a new mechanic. Like on Kill Jaden, he talks about Kill Jaden. The Illidan phase, that was new. The rest of it wasn't. The rest of it we had in vanilla in some form or other. Having multiple mechanics at once, yes, that's what makes a fight more difficult. Particularly if the way you deal with them is contradictory. If it's like, oh, I need to move towards the boss to deal with this mechanic, but I need to move away from the boss to deal with this mechanic. Oh, I've got both of them at once. And then you have to go, right, which one's going to drop first? This one, move there, then move there really quickly. Something like that. Yes, that makes it more difficult. But that was the case, again, AQ40 and Nax both had those things. The bomb thing, yeah, I mean, that was a mechanic. Only an imbecile could fail that mechanic. We had such a person who would regularly fail that mechanic. But you had to be dumb as hell to fail the bomb thing. Yeah, Molten Core and Blackwing Layer were not complicated mechanically. At all. It was still incredible how many people would fail the mechanics. But they were not difficult. AQ40 did step it up. There was some really tough stuff in there. I mean, the thing about, like, Cthulhu, for example, what was very clever about the design of Cthulhu, because like I say, the problem was, with 40 people, there's no way you need 40 people to all coordinate. You're not realistically going to do that. So a lot of the encounters really didn't need 40 good players, so you could carry a lot of people. Which was actually nice from a social point of view, because it meant you could be a good guild, but carrying some people who were a bit shit, but, you know, fun people to be around, good for banter. They would die quite quickly, but that didn't stop them talking on TeamSpeak. Then, but Cthulhu was clever, because the way you had to do that for most of the fight is you had to be in like groups of 5, like a party, and there was these tentacles to deal with. And you basically needed everyone to be on it, including healers. I had to be on it as doing DPS as a healer, which was most unusual at the time. And you had to be on top of dealing with these tentacle things. If someone in your party died, you would likely not have the DPS to be able to cope with them. Then more of you would die, and then that would spill over to the groups next to you, who would now have to be dealing with their own tentacles and yours, and very quickly the whole thing was a wipe. So when you talk about that, the personal responsibility, one person dying on Cthulhu at the wrong time, I mean, at certain times of the fight you could sort of get away with it, But at the wrong time, massive problem. And then the fact when you got eaten, again, there was some stuff you had to do to get in there. You had to do some damage to the tentacly thing before you got spat out. All that sort of stuff was all about personal responsibility. And so that fight was probably the best fight for actually coping with 40 people and making all 40 people responsible. Anyway, where are we? More than mechanical difficulty. Look at Mythic Croesus. Easy mechanics, razor-thin margin of error. Even in Nax, the margins were never as slim as they are now. Oh no, they were. Even on the trash, they were. You look at the trash from... can't remember. Thingy Spider Boss to Mex... no, not Mexner. The other one in between. Shit, I've forgotten her name. Second boss in the Spider Wing. The trash there... you couldn't do what you do in Tier 7 version of Nax, which is just to go, oh, we're a raid. We'll go to this trash pack. We'll kill this trash pack. We'll go to the next trash pack. We'll kill that trash pack. You would all wipe instantly, within seconds. Because they used to fire out venom spits that would one-shot any non-tank. So the only way to deal with it, I remember you had to position them quite carefully. I had to be jammed in a doorway so that I could see my tank to heal them, but do not have line of sight on the mob they were tanking, because if it spit on anyone that wasn't a tank, dead. It took a long time to deal with that trash. We also had the pre-Cthulhu trash, which was amazing for two reasons. One, it was pretty... I mean, that was pretty difficult. It required a fair amount of coordination. Because then you used to have main assists. We don't even have main assists anymore. It's not even a thing. You used to have main assists then. But the other thing is, I put up the Hunter to do this. This was amazing. Because the trash pre-Cthulhu would mind control people. And what I used to tell our main assist, who was a hunter, if it ever mind controls a gnome, target them immediately. Because people would follow the main assist for the DPS target. Because it was the only way to efficiently... because you couldn't just have people DPSing whatever. And all right, symbols were out at this time, but it was an inefficient way to do it. Just use main assist. Grand Widow Fairlene, something like that. Fairlena, I think it was, wasn't it? Something like that, anyway. But yeah, so as soon as they mind controlled a gnome, kill the gnome. Amazing times. You don't get that anymore either. It's so much difficult. It's so more difficult. Yeah, Grand Widow Fairlena, I remember now. Yes, thank you. But yeah, the trash on the way to that was horrific. The trash in a lot of parts of Nax was absolutely fearsome. Same as Anchorage. You know, there's those wandering mobs, those like bug things. They would kick the shit out of you if you came across them, and they patrolled. They had quite a long patrol ride. Have I seen any of the new raids on the fights of the PTR? No, I've not actually. Apparently a lot of those smaller groups with specific job mechanics are there. Okay. No, I haven't. To be honest, no, I haven't actually checked up on the fights, the raid fights yet. You're slightly worried about Classic because the number of elitists who know everything about vanilla will ruin the new play experience. The thing is, though, you can't... there is not going to be a new player experience for it. You have to accept it. It's a game that's 14 years old. I mean, this is what made me laugh when I saw people doing videos and stuff on, oh, we've got some screenshots from Classic WoW being leaked. I thought, wow, we've got something being leaked from 14 years ago. Amazing. It's not a new game. It's not a new game. It's just, you know, it's a game that in theory they need never have got rid of. You know, they could have always had it side by side. Whenever they changed the expansion, they could have always kept a few servers for the original expansion. It's the sort of thing they could have always done. They just didn't, and then they're bringing it back. You know, but it's an old game. And from a new player point of view, I mean, I don't think other players will ruin it. If you want to enjoy it for yourself, just don't look at any like videos or anything like that on it. Preacher's glowed over them. Yeah, I saw a video where he said he was quite happy with them. But I didn't actually watch the video. At some point I will have a look at some of the fights. They didn't used to need vanilla. Retail is still a good game. It's just unfortunate that sometimes you throw out the baby with the bathwater. There were certain things that were not good about it that they improved. It's just that sometimes that had an undesirable knock-on effect. It's a shame, but there you go. In Zul'Gurub, you used to purposely get mind control so you could kill people. You made a rogue back there. No, I did the opposite. No, that didn't work because you would just get mugged. Whenever anyone went to pick up the voodoo doll, everyone else would be around them waiting to mug them. Fortunately, Bubble worked. What are my thoughts on the giant sword penetrating Azeroth? Lore-wise, stupid or justifiable? I think it's stupid. I think it's stupid for two reasons. One, it's not actually... Alright, obviously it is Kil'jaeden's sword. Not Kil'jaeden. Sargeras' sword. Because he's the one who plunged it in. But... it's not actually the sword we associate with him. But the other problem with it is... Like, surely that would have caused more of a wound than Aman'Thul ripping Y'Shaarj out of Azeroth. And yeah, alright, okay, Azeroth is bleeding. Wow, that seems to be it. It seems to be a little bit of a cut. It doesn't seem to be more serious than that. So I do think it's ridiculous. It's an absolute nonsense. If it's penetrated deep enough to stick in Azeroth, then it should have done at least as much damage, if not more, than ripping off a leech, which is effectively what killing Y'Shaarj was. It's like Brack said, some people just like the flavour of vanilla better. Well, there you go. In 8.2 or 8.3, do you think that the city Nazjusar will be another underwater city, or will it be risen from the depths? I would not rule out them doing an underwater zone again. The problem is I didn't play through all of Cataclysm. I joined quite late on. So I don't know what the community generally thought of Vashj'ir, you know, the underwater zone. I don't know whether the opinion was largely positive or not. Obviously they haven't done one since, but then there's a lot of downsides to it. The other thing is, though, I notice, have you noticed, I saw it linked data mine somewhere, there's a new seahorse mount. Have you seen that? That suggests to me underwater zone. So I really do believe that there will be an underwater zone. And do you know what else? I think it'll coincide with when Pathfinder Part 2 comes out as well. Because I think, I talked about this before, didn't I? I think there's going to be another, just like with Argus. Pathfinder 2 came out in Legion. It's like, yay, you can have flying now. We're going to Argus. Yay! You can't fly on Argus. Ah. The same thing's going to happen. It's going to come out, you know, Pathfinder 2, yay, you've got flying. Oh, by the way, you're all going to wherever the hell, underwater. They hated Vashj'ir. Everyone did Hydra said, okay, well, see, I didn't know that. In which case, I suppose they'll think very hard about it. But it still would not surprise me if they do an underwater zone. Now, I suppose they might do an underwater zone in conjunction with a couple of other islands for the same patch. So it's not all about the underwater zone. But I can still see them doing one. I'm not saying I think they will. I can see it. You wouldn't be surprised if it's underwater visually, but with regular mechanics, minimal water mechanics. See, the seahorse worries me. Why would you bring out a seahorse mount? Excuse me. Also, what about those anchors you could get in Legion? You know when that patch came out, and I can make anchors now as a blacksmith, which basically you use them and it plummets you to the bottom. If you're in water, it plummets you to the bottom. Quick way of getting to the bottom of a large body of water. What could that possibly be used for? Got underwater zone written all over it. Underwater raid would be annoying, but again, I refer you to the artwork for Lady Vash, which is very tentacly. It looks like it's not well suited to moving on land. So, although I would be very surprised if there was a whole underwater raid, I think that would be a risk too. I think that would be too much of a risk. I would not be surprised if there were at least part of a Lady Vash encounter that were underwater. I could see that happening. They should do something optional like the Chromie scenario, I think you mean. So you can go if you like, but if you don't have to. Well, I think they should do more types of content like that anyway, but I don't know. I see some underwater stuff coming. I just see it coming. But, you know, time will tell. We might even find out at BlizzCon. If they go all Little Mermaid sail on us, do you think we'll have a better chance at Naga playable race now? How can you, like, I know if you're a Horde player, this is probably not the first thing you think about. But I look at Naga and I just say, apart from the fact they've got no affiliation with either Horde or Alliance, and I know a lot of Horde racers can't wear shoes, and most of them really shouldn't wear hats. But Naga wouldn't even be able to wear trousers. It'd be like belt, chest, gloves, wrist and shoulders, and that'd be it. Nothing else would fit. You've got to think about these things. You think they could do an underwater zone with a bubble area? See, that would just defeat the purpose for me. I think they'll go for the full thing. But who knows? Do I mean Ashara? I do mean Ashara. I keep saying Lady Vash, I don't know why. Yes, sorry, I do mean Ashara. Was I able to do any PTR raid testing? No. I've not even attempted to be honest. I'm not in a guild that would do it. And also, I'm not going to be raiding. So, you know, it wouldn't be a sensible thing for people to bring me along anyway. If they do Naga, they can do Sethrak. They can... You've got to think about armour. If they can't wear the armour, shouldn't really do it. It's bad enough, as I say, with multiple races not being able to wear shoes. You know, they sort of wear these sock type things. They get away with it. But for something that has no legs... It's not impossible. It's just not really worth it. And there's no compelling storyline reason for it to happen either. In fact, quite the reverse. It would take an awful lot of storyline massaging to make it work. There's a far stretch for Naga to Horde through the Blood Elves from the Warcraft 3 mission where... Yeah, but the Blood Elves have also disenfranchised Kael'thas as well. They killed him. He's dead. Twice. Even with the bones, the toy bones of transformation where you are in Naga, it doesn't do much fight-wise now. Jinyu would be fine. Yes, you could sort of get away with Jinyu. You could get away with Hosen. I did actually wonder about Hosen, given that there's Hosen in BfA again. I was thinking, maybe they're trying to sort of, you know, sneakily bring them back so that they become a playable race. You think they'll do Nazjatar like they did Gorek and Kata? Don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what they've got planned for it. But, you know, there's a decent chance that they could say something at BlizzCon about that. But I really do think... I just think, you know, it's obviously very naval, the expansion. You know, there's the strong old gods link there. And we know Unzoth, the only one that we know would still be active. I mean, he's even featured in shorts, that Ashara short. We've got the Seahorse mounts, has been data mined. There's the Anchor from Legion, which I was very suspicious about when I first saw that on the PTR, before that came in. Although it's curious that there is no equivalent, as far as I can tell, BfA item, which is a bit weird. But it's all very strange. But yeah, it all just, to me, points to there being some sort of underwater content of whatever nature, you know. And I can see it being a zone. It's their way of being spiteful, you know, because they've got to put flying in the game. They don't want to put flying in the game. It's basically their way of saying, okay, you wanted flying in the game, here you go. By the way, here's a zone without flying, you know. And then they can't complain because you've got flying, stop whining. But you can't fly in the zone that you now need to go to. It would be just like, you know, just like them, I think. But anyway, we've come to the end there. So thank you very much for coming on, everyone. I've got to record videos and stuff now. So, yes. Comments down below, of course, if you're watching this non-live, or indeed, if you want anything to sort of come up in future ones. I will be doing another couple of... I've got another couple of discussion-y type WoW videos planned for later on towards the weekend. But I've got a Warhammer one to do now, actually. So, yes, thank you for coming on, everyone. And until next time, I will see you later. Bye-bye.